Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region. My name is Brandon, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. Today, I'm joined by Ian Escalante, Executive Director of Rocky Mountain Gun Owners RMGO, to give us a recap of the anti-gun laws that passed the state legislature this year. Well, Ian, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to talk to the free people of the Rocky Mountain region. I apologize. I've been dealing with allergies for the last couple weeks, so my voice might sound a little bit off. So for the folks listening, I'm very sorry that I'm subjecting you to this, but we're going to talk about really what the communists did this session and really all the unforgivable atrocities they committed to our rights.
Definitely. And Senate Bill 3, which we'll get into, is the worst anti-gun bill in Colorado history, and it really dominated the headlines this year. But unfortunately, Colorado saw a total of 14 anti-gun laws passed this year. And Ian, I'm glad that RMGO is leading the fight and keeping track of these bills because it's so difficult to keep track of everything. Before we dig into some of the highlights individually, what general comments do you have about the 2025 legislative session?
Well, I want to tell all the folks who are watching at home and have seen this and are very discouraged and very disheartened. The RMGO team, we fought hard. We were the only group that was there the entire session. Countless other people are going to try to claim that they fought and that they were leading the fight. In reality, there were times where my team and I were the only people that were showing up to testify against anti-gun bills. We'll get into that a little bit. The radical left and the anti-gun lobby, they were on a revenge tour this year. They have seen that RMGO and our activists and our members and supporters were able to defeat the assault weapons bans of 2022 and 2023, or sorry, 2023 and 2024. In 2023, we beat a private property shooting ban where they were going to try to regulate where you could shoot on your own property. They're going to allow Boulder County to say that you can't discharge a firearm on your own property in unincorporated land. We also defeated last year, we defeated a bill that would mandate liability insurance on all gun owners. We'd also defeated a bill that would have pretty much abolished school resource officers in this state, taken away armed guards from schools. And we fought hard, and we beat the crown jewel, the assault weapons ban, 2 years in a row, and they were so angry. In addition to that, they lost ground for the first time in a decade. The supermajority was broken because of the three races that Rocky Mountain Gun Owners Super PAC was the most involved in. House District 50 with removing Mary Young, House District 19 where we ran Jennifer Parenti out of her seat, and Dan Woog defeated the puppet that the left put up in that seat. And then probably the craziest victory of all was House District 16. Rebecca Kelty squeaked out a win with 3 votes against one of the most radical on all issues state representatives in Colorado history. So we fought hard. Um, we really did what we could. But this year, they were ready for revenge. They were very angry about Kamala Harris's historic defeat, and they were ready to bring revenge. And they started to see the pendulum swing here in Colorado, albeit not as aggressively as states like Arizona or Nevada or Pennsylvania, but it swung nonetheless. And they were terrified. And they said, we got to do what we can to force the opposition out of this state right now. And if we don't force them out of the state, then there's a really good chance they could actually uh, remove these people from power, and they couldn't handle the thought of it. All the work that they've done over the last decade going down the toilet, all their awful laws being repealed. So they wanted to make sure they put the screws to us. And what we saw this year was not just here in Colorado. Actually, we just wrote an article for a National Association for Gun Rights newsletter. We saw this in Washington State. We saw this in California. We saw this in New York. We saw this. We saw them try to pass. They're currently trying to pass full-scale gun confiscation in the state of Rhode Island. They tried to do something similar to that in New Mexico. It failed, and now the governor is trying to call the legislature back into special session to pass a full-blown ban on all semi-autos with a forcing you to register guns that you possess already. So they're trying really hard. Colorado was no different than anything else that we've seen in all these other blue states, but they've said, you know what, we're going to stake our claim here, we're going to solidify our territory, and we're going to run everything we possibly can. And we tried very, very hard. We spent tens of thousands of dollars on fighting back on text messages, on patch through calls, on mobilizing students through Young Americans for Liberty and RMGO volunteers to get out in these legislators' districts and inform their voters of what's going on. But unfortunately, it wasn't enough. And I hate that I have to say that. I hate that that is the reality, but I'm not going to lie to you. We did everything we possibly could. But what we have to do is we have to make them pay next year. That's the only way we can claw our way back out of this hellhole. Because if we don't do that, we're going to keep losing. They're going to find ways to bribe and pressure and coerce Democrats who don't support this radical agenda to vote in favor of it anyway. And we saw that this year. We really saw the Democrat machine wield their pressure on folks like Dylan Roberts and Kyle Mullica, both of whom have a history of opposing extreme gun bans like Senate Bill 3. But for whatever reason, this year they folded like a cheap suit, and they were the ones that got the bill over the finish line. So we fought hard. We did everything we possibly could. But what we have to do is we have to get ready for 2026. We have to kick these people out of office. And if we don't do that, I don't really know what to tell you. We got to make them pay. If they get away with this, just imagine how much worse things are going to be in 2027.
100%. We've seen what they're capable of. They totally want to abolish the Second Amendment. I mean, that's 100% their goal. And it's outrageous. I mean, it's totally outrageous. And I hope people now really understand the stakes and really understand just how serious these people are in terms of trying to disarm us and force their radical agenda upon us. But I really appreciate, Ian, that you brought up the demographic change because I've kind of thought that for a while. So I'm glad to hear you say it, that some of this anti-gun laws is really to try and get people to leave Colorado, right? They want to get more conservative types or liberty-minded individuals to flee the state. And unfortunately, we see it on social media all the time where people say, I'm leaving Colorado, I'm giving up this fight. And that just plays into their hand because now all of a sudden, all those pro-gun voters move to Wyoming, Nebraska, wherever they end up going. And the Democrats just get a little bit more of a foothold here. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Absolutely. And what I tell people on a daily basis is that moving, you might get some temporary reprieve, but look at the states that surround us. For a great example is the state of Arizona. They're one blue gust of wind away from being Colorado. They have a Democrat governor for the first time in decades that got elected in 2022. Both of their U.S. senators are now Democratic, which was unheard of 10, 15 years ago. And in addition to that, they're holding on to their majorities in the legislature by one seat in each chamber. One bad election, and they're gonna repeal constitutional carry. They're gonna start passing all these insane safe storage, assault weapons ban. They're gonna start running everything down left field the way they're doing here in Colorado. And what they're going to do is they're just going to keep importing their people in from California because this is Arizona is a California border state. So we got to make sure, you can run, but you can't hide. And they're doing it in Texas. They've been trying it in Texas for years. The problem in Texas is you can't even get the Republicans down there to pass conservative legislation. The same can be said about a state like Florida. Florida, they can't even get a super majority of a Republican legislature in the state of Florida to repeal red flag gun confiscation, repeal the 21 and under gun and ammo ban, and repeal the ban on open carry. It's totally insane. They have a supermajority. Governor DeSantis has been pushing the legislature and they've been flying him the bird. So you're not safe. Even if you move to a red state, you're not necessarily safe because if you're not dealing with commies, you're dealing with rhinos. And if you're not dealing with rhinos, you're dealing with a state that's being overrun by commies. And Exhibit A is Arizona. Salt Lake City is very quickly becoming Denver. We see Utah starting to head that way, Boise, Idaho. We have to stay here and fight because if we allow them to get away with it in Colorado, they're going to say this works and they're going to export this virus to the entire American West. And we may wake up 10, 15 years down the road with the entire American West being like Colorado and California, and we can't allow that to happen.
Definitely can't. And like you said, we did have some good pro-liberty victories this year, at least in 2024, the elections there. So I'm confident that that pendulum will keep swinging, and through the hard work of organizations like RMGO and you and all the volunteers and everybody else out there fighting the good fight, I know we can make some progress. So really encourage people not to give up, but to get organized, and let's put a plan together. But let's go ahead and jump into some of the bills, some of the highlights here.
Absolutely.
So, folks, I'm going to share the screen. This is a website that was definitely a great resource during the legislative session, a resource you should definitely be checking out. If you are not a member of RMGO, you should definitely become one. They are leading that fight, doing an incredible job down there. So, give them the support, give them the financial ability to lead this lawsuits, and have great staff like Ian and his team there. So, if you go to rmgo.org, easy website to remember, rmgo.org, then you click under resources here, resources, and then bill watch. That's where we're going to go to today, folks. So if you want to dig into all 14 anti-gun bills and see some of the ones that didn't make it, as well as some of the good pro-gun bills that, of course, got killed, this is your one-stop shop. rmgo.org/bill watch. Bill watch is all one word there. So I'll make it a little bit bigger here, but awesome resource. Definitely check it out, people. And so, Ian, you want to start off with one of these bills here?
Absolutely. So, we'll start off with we have plenty to talk about regarding Senate Bill 3, but I want to rattle off a couple other ones really quick. I want to start with House Bill 1133 because if this doesn't show what the intention of the radical left is to do to our state, I don't know what will. The House Bill 1133, I'll wait for you to get down to it,
All right, let me zoom
um,
back out.
was a bill that would ban adults under the age of 21 from purchasing ammunition. Now, if you'll remember 2 years ago, they passed a bill banning adults under 21 from being able to buy long guns. Handguns are already regulated federally. Thankfully, there's been some court cases that have called that into question. I personally believe it's viciously unconstitutional to say you're an adult, you can exercise your rights, you can go serve in the military, you can go vote, but you can't go and buy a firearm. That's totally insane. But what they're doing now is that they're trying to pretty much make it impossible for young people to be exposed to guns until they're well into adulthood. Well into adulthood. And there's a reason for this madness. And the reason for the madness is because if it's illegal for a parent to take their child hunting, if it's illegal for an 18-year-old to go out and buy a shotgun and buy some ammunition or buy a hunting rifle and buy ammunition to go out and pull a tag and go shoot deer or elk or whatever, and really understand and get comfortable with firearms. Obviously, the Second Amendment is not meant for hunting. I actually abhor the types of politicians that say, I support the Second Amendment. I'm a lifelong hunter and sportsman. I think those people are most of the time, if you hear that, you're going to hear some sort of justification for gun control coming after that. Well, we got to make sure that we have training before you carry a firearm. Or, I don't believe that you should be able to own a fully semi-automatic weapon of war. But also, at the same time, it's not just that, it's shooting sports are important. Competitive shooting. I know plenty of people who got involved in competitive shooting at age 14. I know people who they were actually able to outshoot most law enforcement units at age 12 and 13 because they were involved in competitive shooting. And when you have young people at a young age getting comfortable with firearms, understanding what the Second Amendment means, understanding and being able to sift through the anti-gun propaganda that's being shoved down their throat in the school system, that's being shoved down their throat through mass media, you're actually going to create a pro-gun generation. They are very, very worried that the generation that's coming up, we're seeing these polls come out that young men are breaking conservative with by very, very, very large margins, and it's terrifying them. And they want to make sure that that never happens again. They want to make sure from a very young age they are terrifying and scaring the pants off of these poor children regarding firearms. And that's why they want to make it criminal for adults under the age of 21 to purchase ammunition. And the way they passed this law, this now law, which our great libertarian governor signed, was actually one of the most black bagged, just scummy things that I saw this session. And the bill went to the House Business Affairs and Labor Committee. And that committee is actually probably one of the friendliest or least hostile committees to the Second Amendment in the state House. It is Democrat majority by 3 seats, but you have Democrats on there who actually vote with us 80% of the time. Representative Sheila Leader from South Jeffco, she's a Democrat, but I'll give her credit. She votes with us about 80% of the time. You see other Democrats on there who have been beaten into submission by us, mainly Bob Marshall and Tisha Morrow from Pueblo. And what happened is that Rep Sheila Leader, who is always, she's like, as I mentioned, a relatively reliable vote, at least for a Democrat. We had the votes to kill House Bill 1133 in the Business Affairs and Labor Committee. But what happened is Monica Duran, the majority leader, and you see there that she's a bill sponsor, she went and she scheduled the Business Affairs and Labor Committee hearing on House Bill 1133 for a time that she knew that Representative Leader would be absent due to a doctor's appointment that she had planned for months. And when a representative is absent for committee, who gets to choose their replacement? The majority leader, Monica Duran, the bill sponsor. So she replaced Representative Leader with Representative Rebecca Stewart, who is one of the most hardcore anti-gun leftists. She represents Northeast Jefferson County. Her husband's a Columbine survivor. She's a total anti-gun lunatic. She replaced her. She replaced Sheila Leader with Rebecca Stewart. And then what happened is when push came to shove, Tisha Morrow, who's from a Pueblo, a pro-gun county, a county that overwhelmingly voted against Proposition KK, despite its historic Democrat voting habits, Tisha Morrow cast the deciding vote to push House Bill 1133 out of committee and onto the House floor. Then, when it came time to vote on the House floor, Tisha Morrow changed her vote when she knew that the Democrats had about the 3 votes they needed to get House Bill 1133 passed out of the chamber, and they knew it was going to be a slam dunk in the Senate. So she tried to play games and deceive her voters into thinking that she actually voted in favor of guns, when in reality, this bill should have never made it out of committee. And it was her treachery, her betrayal of the people of Pueblo that got this bill into becoming law. Tisha Morrow is solely responsible for adults under the age of 21 now being banned from being able to buy ammo. In addition to that, there's all kinds of new regulations on how gun shops have to store ammo. They have to put it behind a locked glass. People can't just go and pull their ammo off the shelf anymore. There's all kinds of regulations on shipping and handling of ammo. And Tisha Morrow is the reason why this happened. And that is why she is one of the top targets for us going into the 2026 election. It is vital that she be removed. She cannot be allowed to get away with this kind of treachery.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's so egregious. It's absolutely horrible. And I really appreciate how you brought up that it's this cultural battle that these anti-gunners are fighting, right? And they know that. They know that guns are cool, right? People are playing Call of Duty. People are watching John Wick 5, whatever they're at now, And, there's this great love of firearms with young men in particular. And, as you said, a lot of them are becoming a lot more conservative. And so really attacking the youth and depriving the youth of rights is what they're doing here, which is absolutely insane because so many of these Democrats and these progressive types, they talk about protecting kids and giving youth more rights, which just not the right to defend yourself, folks, and
Nope.
just to think we heard some incredible testimony this year on this bill as well, where people were talking about, hey, what if I'm a 20-year-old college student living in downtown Denver, God forbid, and you're telling me I can't, they're already going after me buying a gun, but now say I was able to get a gun, but now I can't go buy ammo to defend myself. I mean, it's absolutely utterly insane and so horrendous. But I really also just want to point out here, folks, on the RMGO website, you can actually click on the bill link. There's a hyperlink here, and it'll take you to the bill so you can read it yourself. You can really check out the legislative website to find out who voted for it. You should really know who voted for this. If they're your representative, your senator, it's really important to pay attention to. And I appreciate all the insight too, Ian, because I could tell you definitely were involved in the fight to know all of those details. And that's great insider information. I really appreciate hearing that insider baseball. But folks, you can click in here, read through it. You can read through all the different amendments and history of the bill and how it passed and how it made it out of committee. It's really interesting stuff. But yeah, absolutely shameful legislation and definitely a huge detriment to the people of Colorado and especially to young people across our state. So, and of course, our governor, the authoritarian, phony libertarian, Jared Polis, all too eager to sign this bill to deprive under 21-year-olds of their rights, making them second-class citizens. Absolutely crazy.
Absolutely insane. The other thing they did this year too is they ran a bill, House Bill 1238. And that one was to pretty much strangle gun shows out of existence. And that was run, and the bill sponsor, Sean Camacho, when there were Republican legislators, conservative pro-gun champions like Representative Ron Weinberg, who is in information technology, and there were all kinds of surveillance requirements now, and a plan that must be submitted to law enforcement. It would outlaw the you bringing your gun and showing it at a gun show unless you had a federal firearms license. Absolutely insane. The goal was to strangle them out of existence. And Representative Weinberg, who is his day job is information technology, said that there's absolutely no way that any venue could comply and any gun show could comply with the surveillance requirements that are being put up by this bill. And Sean Camacho went to the well and said, more or less, well, if they don't want to follow state law, then they don't have to hold gun shows in our state anymore. The level of just callous arrogance and brazen, I don't even know honestly the right word for it. Um, they're proud of themselves that they're running gun shows out of the state. They're proud of themselves that they're running Second Amendment supporters out of the state. They think this is some sort of great accomplishment, which goes to show these people are not people that we disagree with. These aren't people that we have different views on. I've heard so many people who claim to be pro-gun, coming out and attacking RMGO's tactics because we make no qualms about the fact that we're aggressive. We talk to voters. We go after these people. And I hear people saying, well, you got to catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar, or we got to figure out how to work with these people and change their hearts and minds because we got to stop vilifying them. That's why they keep coming after us. No, these people are our enemies. They are our enemies. They're our political and ideological enemies. They would round us up and throw us in prison if given the opportunity. And if you don't understand that, you have zero business being in politics whatsoever. This is equivalent to back in the 50s when Fidel Castro's communist revolutionaries were trying to take over Cuba, or the Maoist revolution in China. These people are the enemy. You give them control, you give them power. It doesn't matter how much favor you try to curry with them. It doesn't matter if you throw your own side under the bus. They will destroy you. They will strangle you out of existence the same way they're doing with gun shows. And if you fail to understand that, you should honestly pack your bags and get the hell out of the state. Because if you're involved in politics, you're going to be doing more harm than good.
Yeah, I mean, these people are definitely, like you said, ideological enemies. They are not to be reasoned with, right? They don't, it's not like anybody can make a good argument. And, we still got to try on some level. Don't get me wrong. I really appreciate RMGO's tactics and completely agree with how you do it. But I just see some good, well-intentioned people show up to committee hearings and they try and make reasoned arguments. And, they're good pro-gun Coloradans. And they're saying, hey, don't you understand how this bill is going to hurt people, how it's actually going to have bad effects and this and that. And yeah, like you said, people just need to understand they don't care. These lawmakers who are trying to destroy the Second Amendment do not care if it's a good or bad idea. They're not well intentioned whatsoever, I guess is the right way to put it, right?
I agree, and I'm glad you mentioned testimony because it is so vitally important, though, that we still show up and we testify. And we make sure that these people hear our voices and force them to spit in our face, force them to fly us the bird. If we don't show up and testify, they're just going to say, oh, well, everybody in Colorado wants this. So that's fine. Make them make them look you in the eye before they take your rights away. And I give credit to all the people who came to all the hearings for Senate Bill 3 and all these other horrible anti-gun bills and stayed till late in the night. And they came for the floor votes, all of that. More power to them, props to them. A huge thanks to all of them because they could have stayed home. They could have taken the easy way out. Instead, they went into a room with people who hate them, who they knew weren't going to listen, but still said their piece and spoke their mind and spoke directly to these legislators. So, huge shout out to those folks, many of whom are RMGO members. They did a phenomenal job. They are rock stars, and I really, really hope they don't give up and they keep coming back to the Capitol every year.
100%. Yeah, I mean, listening to the Senate Bill 3 testimony, listening to all of this testimony, it was so great. Like, I felt inspired and I felt it was great not to feel alone, right? Because it's easy to get so discouraged, like you said, kind of at the beginning. It's easy to have that kind of negative viewpoint out with all this assaults on our rights. But to know that there's thousands of other Coloradans out there who are taking the time to show up, to speak out. I mean, it's inspiring and it was giving me goosebumps just talking about it, and it was incredible. Some of the testimony is just phenomenal stuff of history that people have in their own personal lives, how guns have helped save their lives, what gun culture means to them, and it's amazing stuff. So, I think about it the same kind of thing with bumper stickers sometimes, right? It's like I don't have my RMGO bumper sticker on my Jeep because I'm going to convince somebody to become a pro gun person, right? But I have my RMGO bumper sticker on my Jeep because it shows all the other people driving around, hey, there's another RMGO member. Hey, there's another pro gun guy. I'm not alone. Hell yeah, you get a little peace sign or something, wave at you. And that's why we do. That's part of the reason why testimony is so important is to show other people, hey, I'm standing up, you can stand up too, and we're in this together, and there's a community of us, and that's pretty cool, and that's one of the most exciting things I think about what's happening here in Colorado is this growth of this liberty community who's getting more organized than ever.
Absolutely. I kind of want to pivot and briefly talk about House Bill 1262. We're calling it the Second Amendment Gag Act. Totally, absolutely insane. They're trying to say that if you open carry around election activity, the anti-gun activists can sue you for everything you own. If you open the door while a political canvasser comes, while open carrying, they can sue you for everything you own. And worst of all, if you're playing Nerf guns in the front yard with your kids, and your neighbor comes walking by and you say, "Hey, don't forget to vote for whoever," you can get sued for everything you own under election intimidation. And in addition to that, the court in this bill is required to presumptively rule in favor of the anti-gun activist that's suing you for election intimidation. You, as the defendant, must prove that you were not intimidating them, that you were not trying to intimidate them. This bill is a total violation, and Nick Henriksen is another just total vile human being who sponsored so many of these awful pieces of legislation. And we're going after him too because he's in Pueblo County. That's a county that is overwhelmingly pro-gun. They voted for President Trump by 6 points. They're sick and tired of being overrun by leftists. Their sheriff, David Lucero, a Democrat, came out in strong opposition to Senate Bill 3. And now you have their senator going around and, pretty much wink, wink, nod, nod to the anti-gun lobby and saying, "Hey, I'm going to do your bidding," and thinking and having such little opinion of his constituents that he'll vote against Senate Bill 3 but he'll vote in favor of every other gun bill and he thinks his constituents are so stupid that he gets to vote. They're going to think that his one good vote cancels out all the other horrific things he's done. Not going to happen. We're coming after him. We already have an opponent lined up. The Pueblo County GOP has been doing a great job. We're ready for war in this district.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely one of the top targets. One of the three, in my mind, Senate seats that needs to flip in Colorado. And of course, if there's a bad bill down at the legislature, Stephen Woodrow's not far behind. That little worm Woodrow down there. I mean, I was in the committee hearing. Gosh, it must have been 2 years ago or 3 years ago now. I don't remember, at the quote unquote assault weapons ban down there. And I remember the bill failed in that committee. Thankfully, I was there till 1:30 in the morning. And Woodrow, in his little speech, thinking he's so clever and so cute, says, banning handguns, outlawing handguns. It was something like that. And he goes and he raises and he goes, "I'm down," or "I'm game." It was something like that. And it's like so obvious that these people just have nothing but contempt for regular, normal Coloradans and people who own a firearm. I mean, they want to ban handguns. And Woodrow and his little collaborators here are totally on board with that. And yeah, of course, and here is that Orwellian language here: freedom from intimidation in Elections Act. And then you read the bill and you're like, what are you talking about here? Like, who's being intimidated because somebody has a squirt gun or a toy gun while somebody's trying to get people to vote? I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's like, and it's crazy. It's like this is also a constitutionally protected right, our Second Amendment rights, and all these bill sponsors would say, well, voting is, in the Constitution, blah blah blah. And it's like, so you're saying I can't have one right, this other one, and it's just so hypocritical. It makes no sense.
Absolutely. And the other thing here too is this is a violation of free speech and freedom of expression. I mean, saying you can't, if you are exercising one right, you are banned from exercising another, that flies in the face of the Constitution. And that's why our attorneys are preparing a lawsuit on this horrific piece of legislation as we speak.
Awesome. Great to hear. That's good. And this was one that, and this is what's great about RMGO. You're fighting on all fronts. Like some of the bills that most people have never even heard of that didn't make the big headlines, in the nightly news. And you guys are still down there fighting. And that's cool. And I remember catching your director of operations there down at the Capitol so often, but even didn't he have a squirt gun or a toy
Yeah,
gun
he
even
brought a
there?
squirt gun into committee, and the committee chair at about had a meltdown over it, and it was really funny. And
Yeah.
that was that we all got a good laugh out of that one. But yeah, I mean, it's totally insane. They have such contempt for their fellow Coloradans, for the people. It honestly makes me sick to my stomach. So, I know I don't want to take up too much time here. So, I want to talk about the terrible trio. And the reason I'm calling them the terrible trio is because each one of these bills was sponsored by one man who we have dubbed we'll call him the Che Guevara, a Colfax Che Guevara Communist of the Year award winner, Andrew Basenecker. And he had his name on Senate Bill 3, obviously the worst of them all. He had his name on House Bill 1171, and then he also had his name as a co-sponsor on Senate Bill 86. So I'm going to briefly dive into those three awful bills. I want to spend the most time on Senate Bill 3. Um, Starting with Senate Bill 86, for once, we had a major victory this session, and this was a team effort. It wasn't just RMGO. It was RMGO. It was the Libertarian Party of Colorado. It was Free State Colorado. It was conservative free speech activists. There we go. Andrew Basenecker, once again, he's a prime sponsor. My mistake, not a co-sponsor. And this was something that was a major victory. So what ended up happening is this bill kind of flew under our radar because we were very, very much focused on Senate Bill 3. And we started looking at it and we saw that it passed almost unanimously out of the state Senate. Mark Baisley being one of the only Republicans to vote against this bill. When you're casting your vote for governor, when you have folks in, and I want to be very clear, RMGO has not made an endorsement in the governor's race, but what I am telling you is if you have a candidate running for governor who is currently serving in the legislature, you best check their voting record before you decide to throw your support behind them. And It sailed out of the House with bipartisan support. And in Colorado, bipartisan has just become code for we're gonna get screwed, and we're gonna get screwed really aggressively. And I give a lot of credit to the fighters for liberty like Ken DeGraff and Larry Don Sukla, Scott Bottoms, Brandy Bradley, Stephanie Luck. So many of these patriots. I know I didn't mention all of them, but you know who you are if you're listening to this. So many of these patriots, they took a hard stance even when it wasn't popular, um, to vote against a California style social media censorship bill that sounds like a spawn out of one of Gavin Newsom's dreams. It would mandate social media companies deplatform certain individuals when the Attorney General's office tells them to. You want to talk about the Orwellian Ministry of Truth? The Attorney General's office could sue these companies for triple attorney's fees if within 24 hours of receiving a complaint, they didn't permanently deplatform these people. And they were trying, Ready Colorado and all the controlled opposition groups came out in support of this, and they propped up their little, red flag George Brockler to go send out text messages and say that kids were going to die of fentanyl if you didn't turn all your rights over and give the attorney general, godlike powers to censor your social media accounts. Utterly disgraceful, total lies. And of course, they attacked us and they said all kinds of nasty things about myself and Dudley Brown and all the conservatives who blocked this. But what happened here is that the bill got to Governor Polis's desk, and we had heard intel that Governor Polis was likely going to veto this bill. So we put together, we actually got a letter put together, and we hand delivered it to Governor Polis's office, and in a very eloquent fashion laid out all the reasons why Senate Bill 86 was bad and why it would be in his best interest and in the best interest of Coloradans to veto this awful legislation. Thankfully, he did, and almost immediately the Uniparty came back into session to override the governor's veto. They overrode the governor's veto almost unanimously in the Senate, and it was on its way over to the House. And RMGO, the Libertarian Party, Free State Colorado, we made sure that Republican representatives knew that a vote in favor of overriding Governor Polis's veto, which is probably the only good thing he did this session. I'm not giving him any credit here whatsoever. That if they were to do that, that would be considered an anti-gun vote, and they would be required to answer for their actions. Thankfully, we had enough people come out and enough Republicans saw the light, understood what happened. Unfortunately, a lot of legislators did not really understand what they were voting on. They didn't really understand the ramifications of what would happen here. But in reality, we were able to block the veto override by siphoning off enough conservatives and enough pro-gun people and even some Democrats to block a veto override of this. So I'm very thankful. I'm very happy that we were able to get this done. The credit goes not just to RMGO, but to all the people I mentioned before and to all the legislators who whipped their fellow Republican caucus members and got them to stand strong for the First Amendment and for the Second Amendment and defeating this bill.
Oh, definitely. It was such an exciting time there that just about last week and a half of session there. And then Friday, the Senate passed it. Like you said, Mark Baisley was the only Republican senator to vote no on overriding the governor's veto. It's going to get in the House, we know, on Monday. And over that weekend, I guarantee you on Friday, if they had gotten to the House on Friday, it would have passed. But over the weekend, there was so much constituent contact and so many grassroots activists across the state of Colorado who saw social media posts from from all of us, who got emails from the Libertarian Party of Colorado, who got all this information out there from everybody saying, contact your representative now. This is huge. And it worked. I mean, this was an insane victory for grassroots, and it was one of the most exciting victories we had here in the 2025 legislative session. And people should feel, optimistic about this because it shows that grassroots activism can have an effect. That was one of the big things with the support of RMGO. The House Republicans were out of the super minority this year, right? They had a super minority before, but now that they picked up those seats, there's no longer a super majority for the Democrats in the House, which means they couldn't override the veto on their own. They would need Republican support. So the Republicans actually were able, with those 3 additional seats, to actually help stop the veto override. So it was great to see the Republican caucus actually flex their muscles for once and show that they were able to stand up and say, yeah, we're going to stop this and prevent the House Democrats from actually passing this bad bill. And it was so exciting to see. And yeah, kudos to so many people out there. Leslie Hollywood, she did great too. Wrote an article, and a lot of people down at the Capitol listened to her. So it was amazing to see just all the people come together from everywhere, and really exciting stuff. I mean, Libertarian Party of Colorado basically sent an email out, said if any Republicans vote for this, they're going to have a Libertarian challenger. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that gets their attention.
Yeah, and actually, huge credit to Rally for Our Rights and Leslie Hollywood. She had a major influence on blocking a lot of really bad legislation, and she's another one that deserves a lot of credit for what happened with Senate Bill 86. So I want to move on to House Bill 1171 very briefly, and then I want to get into the monstrosity that is Senate Bill 3. Um, and I want to talk about how this is a situation where we saw the true colors of some Republicans who voted in favor of stripping gun rights away from nonviolent felons, to where if you um, committed 3 felony car thefts, so this is not you holding someone at gunpoint, this is not carjacking, this is not armed robbery, but simply being a dumb kid and stealing a car 3 times, you would then lose your gun rights forever. And 20, 30, 40 years down the road, if you got pulled over for a broken taillight, you could go to prison for 3 years for possessing a firearm simply to defend yourself. And this is where we saw the joke of the Second Amendment caucus that we have here in Colorado, run by Ryan Armagost and Jarvis Caldwell, actually take a worse position on the Second Amendment than Jennifer Bacon and Michael Carter, which, quite frankly, if you are a Republican and Jennifer Bacon and Michael Carter have a better view on the Second Amendment than you, you're disgraceful and you should probably resign. Quite frankly. And unfortunately, that bill passed. Surprisingly, they say politics gives you strange bedfellows. This is where we saw the hardcore pro-gun conservatives and the furthest left communists actually come together to try to defeat this awful bill. There we go. We got Nick Henriksen on there again, scumbag, Andrew Basenecker, and we had unfortunately, it goes to show that having an R next to your name does not cut it. I'm going to dive into that a little bit deeper once we get into Senate Bill 3 here, which, I mean, Senate Bill 3 is the monstrosity. It's the worst gun bill in state history. I previously had said it was the worst gun bill in U.S. history. Since then, I have to admit that I'm wrong. It is not the worst gun bill in U.S. history because Washington's permit to purchase bill and Rhode Island's assault weapons ban are actually significantly worse. So I apologize for calling it the worst gun bill in U.S. history because apparently the gun grabbers aren't happy with just making you buy your rights back for semi-autos. In Washington, they want you to buy your rights back for every firearm. And in Rhode Island, if you own a semi-auto, the government can come to your house, kick down your door, and take it away. So apologies there. But I want to get into Senate Bill 3 and the ramifications of what this bill is going to mean. And the reason why we must remove every single person from office in a competitive district who voted for this. Many of you already know the crux of Senate Bill 3, so I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty details of it. I've mentioned this on this show multiple times, but a brief recap. It started out as an assault weapons ban, a resurrection of the assault weapons ban. We put so much pressure on the senators and on the governor. Um, they realized they couldn't get that bill out of the Senate, so they morphed it under the cover of darkness in a back room of the state Senate into a messy permit to purchase bill. They then realized they couldn't afford to set up this permit to purchase scheme, so they decided to raid a bunch of money out of the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Fund, which actually may put their federal funding via Pittman Robertson, the excise tax that's supposed to go to conservation and it's awarded by the Forest Service. This might cause the Trump administration to revoke $35 million in federal funding for parks and wildlife in this state. And if that happens, I mean, Polis might need to call special session to repeal this thing if that happens. It was extremely messy. You now have to pay a fee, submit your biometric data, pay for a background check, obtain a permission slip from the government to then go take an anti-gun indoctrination course for 12 hours. Once you go take the anti-gun indoctrination course for 2 hours, which you may have to pay for, that's pretty much undefined. You then have to pass a literacy test with 90% or better. After you pass that literacy test, you then have to get your permit, which you may or may not have to pay for, to then get a background check, to then buy a firearm and ammunition, which is now taxed at 6.5%, to then wait 72 hours minimum to receive your firearm. Now, in this situation, if the CBI background check system were to go down, you're screwed. If Colorado Parks and Wildlife fails to staff this new department and set up these application portals via the sheriff's office and process these applications, you're screwed. If the instructors for the anti-gun indoctrination course, which by the way are going to be the same instructors that are going to have to do the new concealed handgun permitting course. So now they're going to have two courses with two completely different standards being funneled through the same instructors, which, oh, by the way, these instructors also now have to get registered with the sheriff. You can't just be a USCCA instructor now and teach concealed handgun permitting classes here in the state of Colorado. You got to get permission from your sheriff now to teach a concealed handgun permitting class. Something's going to give. El Paso County's got a backlog out to the end of the year. Either people aren't going to get their concealed handgun permits or people aren't going to get their permits to purchase semi-autos. Something's going to give here. And the worst part is it gives the sheriff full discretion to deny or revoke permits, or sorry, deny or revoke your firearm safety eligibility card, which if they revoke that, you can't renew your permit. And for any reason, it could be you posted something bad on social media. You got red flagged by an ex or someone who doesn't like you. I mean, this is totally insane. They are purposely making it almost impossible to purchase semi-autos in this state. And don't think they're going to stop here because they're going to go to handguns next. And then it's going to be a full-blown firearm owner ID card like they have in Illinois, where now you can't possess without this permit. This never ends. It never, ever, ever ends. And RMGO worked so hard to defeat this bill. Like I mentioned earlier, we spent tens of thousands. We spent over $100,000. My team and I are currently racking up how much we actually spent. And our donors came in big for us. They helped us. We were able to spend almost as much money as we did last year, despite the fact that we had less time. We actually ran a study, and each gun bill was moving for 24 less days than it was last year. So they rammed all this stuff through, and we were pretty much playing catch up the whole session, despite the fact that we worked really hard and we did our best to prepare. And all of us across the board, unfortunately, they put the screws to us despite how hard we worked. And we lost by 2 votes in the Senate. And when it came over to the House, because of the fact that we picked up those 3 seats, we felt more confident than we did last year because last year it only passed by a handful of votes. And thank you for correcting that. That's an error. It's going into effect August 1st of 2026 now. So if you're going to buy a semi-auto, do it now. Do it as soon as possible. RMGO is going to be waiting in the wings. We're looking to draw up a lawsuit. We're getting ready for 2026. And what we were doing is we spent almost $100,000 in the house alone sending tens of thousands of text messages, patch through calls. We picked out our targets. We knew the people that we had to go after, and we knew that it was going to be close. And what we did, because they ran this bill through the House, in 1 week, they had committee hearings, three committee hearings, and they rammed it through and they got it on the House floor in less than 2 weeks. And we were out there and we were doing what we do. We were sending volunteers, YAL students, RMGO activists, Libertarian Party activists into districts with flyers urging voters to call their representatives and urge them and demand that they oppose Senate Bill 3. And we were going after vulnerable Democrats in competitive districts, many of whom had never had to take a vote this controversial before. And we went after them, and we wanted to make sure that their voters knew. We had to make sure that their voters knew what was going on. And obviously, the Democrats, being pathological liars, came out and started screeching and hollering and accusing us of harassing them and threatening their families. And when they start to do that, the pressure's working because they'll scream and they'll holler and they'll pray to God that someone buys their BS. But if nobody buys their BS, they're going to have to make a decision. And the decision is going to be, do I please Mike Bloomberg, or do I risk making my voters so angry that I get thrown out? And that's the choice they have to make. Well, the pressure was working and they were reaching a breaking point. And someone bought their BS. And we're going to circle back to Second Amendment Caucus Chair and House Republican Whip Ryan Armagost. Now, many people have been upset about the fact that we've gone after him because they're saying, well, you can't fight someone on your own side. There is no unity to be found with Benedict Arnold. There is no unity to be found with someone who commits treachery of this level. What Ryan Armagost did is not only did he apologize to the Democrats who were getting pressure from their district, he bought their lies hook, line, and sinker. He apologized for Second Amendment activists going into their districts and talking to voters. He condemned Second Amendment activists for talking to voters. And worst of all, he revealed RMGO's strategy for how we pressure politicians to the very Democrats who we could have pressured into killing Senate Bill 3. And he did that in a pathetic attempt to curry favor with the enemy because in his mind, if he threw us under the bus, maybe he could convince them, maybe he'd buy some goodwill with them and they would, do what he says or listen to him. It was treacherous, it was disgraceful, and the worst part is he then went on social media, attacked Second Amendment activists for going out into districts and dropping off flyers, not even knocking on doors, dropping off flyers, and then said that all politics and all political operations must stay inside the Capitol, which you and I both know, and we were just talking about this. How much power do we have inside the Capitol? Zero. We have no power inside the Capitol. No power whatsoever. And now the chairman of the Second Amendment Caucus is now, instead of telling Second Amendment supporters to go out into districts, talk to voters, and demand that these politicians defend and secure their right to bear arms, he's now come telling them to come inside the Capitol where they have zero power and beg for scraps, which is utterly disgraceful. They don't listen to us. They don't care what we have to say. The only thing they listen to is demonstrable proof of angry voters. And Ryan Armagost gave them the perfect cover for to vote in favor of Senate Bill 3 to get the bill passed out so it could go back to the Senate and get rubber stamped with all the awful amendments that the House put on there. And then he had the audacity to blame Second Amendment activists for it. It was utterly disgraceful. It was treacherous. And, people are claiming, well, you're starting infighting. There's no unity to be had with someone like this. If they're going to throw Second Amendment activists under the bus and they're going to go, it's the equivalent of having someone in your foxhole radioing signals to the enemy. That's what happened here. And we documented all the transgressions of the phony pro-gun legislator Ryan Armagost on Twitter, on Facebook. You can go look there. You can also find some kind of disturbing videos that he's posted on social media. And quite frankly, that's what this is about. This isn't personal. This has nothing to do with any of the garbage that people are trying to claim or that he's trying to claim that has anything to do with. This has to do with the facts. He threw gun owners under the bus. He threw Second Amendment activists under the bus. And now we called him out. And we need to make sure that gun owners across the state know.
Wow. Well, I really appreciate you providing kind of the background and the details because, I know hopefully some of the people watching this don't know that whole story and now understand what actually happened down there. And, Representative Armagost is my state rep up here in Greeley where I live. And I gotta say, I was most disappointed because I had friends who were out there. And the only reason I wasn't out there is because I had to work. But I had friends out there door knocking that Saturday before Senate Bill 3 was going to be heard in the House. And people I know personally, people I've known for years. And then to see, my state rep trash them online for putting good activism efforts forward for trying to do the right thing and protect our Second Amendment rights was definitely disappointing. So appreciate all the background there. And yeah, it's one of the big controversies of the legislative session, that's for sure. But it's important to get that information out there to people.
Yeah, and the one thing that RMGO, we have a rule at RMGO, we never lie to gun owners. And we're not going to run around and pretend that this, chairman of the Second Amendment caucus is a pro-gun champion. And unfortunately, we endorsed him last year. That was a big mistake. We're not perfect. We make mistakes, and he stabbed us in the back. And we can't have this anymore. We can't allow this to happen. We can't allow someone to run around and run cover because the Second Amendment caucus is becoming a cover caucus for Republicans who want to vote for gun control. And if anyone who's listening to this has an issue with any of that, feel free to reach out to me. But we're here for gun owners. We're here to defend freedom. We're here to defend liberty. And we're here to fight back against the communists. We can't fight back against people like Andrew Basnacker and Tisha Morrow and all these treasonous Democrats when we have people who are supposed to be on our own side throwing us under the bus. So we got to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and we got to make sure that people know.
Well, I mean, that's what's so great about RMGO in my mind is it's different than a lot of other organizations out there because you care about the policy, right? It's policy over personality. It's about the issue itself, right? You're going to fight for the Second Amendment and our God-given right to keep and bear arms and defend our families, regardless of who's the one pushing the idea. If it's a Republican, if it's a Democrat, it doesn't matter. RMGO is still going to fight them, right? It's not about party. It's not about a team. It's the pro-gun. It's an issue, and I mean, and that's what's different. And I hope people appreciate that because that's what it's really all about. It's not about getting a right person elected. It's about defending the Second Amendment and defending our rights. So that's pretty cool to know that, and people hopefully realize that and appreciate that. And then just being a no compromise gun group as well. The fact that you're fighting all these different issues. I mean, fighting for felons who are out of jail, who've served their time. I agree with that completely. I was fighting on social media about this one. With 1171, I thought it was a bad bill and definitely was supportive of RMG's efforts to oppose it. But you have somebody who's already already served their time in jail, who the judge has said that's your sentence. You've paid your debt to society, you served your time. Now you're free living out in the world. And these lawmakers want to strip that person's Second Amendment rights for the rest of their life. Like that was totally wrong. And RMGO is the only group out there fighting on that level. So to be a real no compromise gun group fighting whoever gets in the way, regardless of what party they are, I mean that's something I hope more people appreciate and realize that's what it's about, folks. And it's pretty cool. There's not, you're not out there just saying, oh well, we can't upset our friends, we can't upset certain people. It's like, nope, the issue is the issue. The vote is the vote. You vote right, we can be friends. You vote wrong, we're going to be enemies.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much for letting me come on and explain to the folks what happened this session. We have a plan. Our plan is to kick out leftists in 2026. We're already recruiting candidates in key districts. Tisha Morrow being honestly, and Nick Henriksen being our top targets. We have to remove them from office. We have to get good, strong, conservative, pro-gun Republicans in there to actually go out and fight for our rights. In addition, we are also urging the Department of Justice to take action and investigate the deliberate violation by this state on our God-given rights. You can go to rmgo.org/Bondi and you can sign the petition to urge President Trump's Department of Justice to get involved. And finally, if you haven't already, go to rmgo.org, either give to our legal fund, give what you can so we can start firing up the lawsuit machine, or give to our general fund so we can have money to give to our super PAC and we can start recruiting candidates and getting ready to kick these people out of office.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate you taking the time, Ian. I know it was an exhausting and very difficult session, and appreciate all your work, you catching everybody else who was involved, being down there, there till 1 in the morning, till midnight, till whatever it took to fight for our rights, and really appreciate that. And I hope the rest of the people here in Colorado do as well. So, yeah, just can't encourage people to become members enough. Become a member if you're not already, or pitch an extra couple bucks there to the legal fund. But hopefully, you're getting some rest now and get rested up because we got big fights ahead of us. So, really appreciate your time, sir. Take care. Keep us updated if anything else happens anytime soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Take care.